Welcome to Goose Creek Fly Fishers. I'm Trent. Today we're going to be tying a very old Atlantic salmon pattern out of England. It's called the gray monkey. This fly has been around since the 1800s. It's got its name because you can see the front half of the body there is gray. And initially this fly was tied with gray monkey fur. So you gotta look at those patterns that came out of England in that time period and realize the British Empire really had a global reach, and their fly tyers and probably other people really benefited from the feathers and furs they could get from around the world, around their empire. So let's get into the tie. I'm just using I don't know, this was in a box I think I've talked about before that I was given. It's a bent up, bent back eye. I think it's probably about a size 4. So I'm going to start with white thread, even though the instructions say black thread. And I will explain why I'm using white instead of black when I get there. But we're just going to start off with white thread for right now. I apologize that squeaking. Geez, my bobbin doesn't have any moving parts, and yet somehow it still squeaks. So the tail of this fly is teal. So I'm just going to pull off some teal fibers off of a teal flank feather, like so. And I like my tails on these because there's not really an instruction. I like them to kind of match the gape of the hook. So something about that size, right about there, I think. Looks good. So giving a good pinch wrap, just holding that material on the top of the hook, like so. And then I'm just going to bind all this down. And I'm binding all that down because that back half of this fly is a... Alright, we'll go ahead and I'm just going to lay down a white underbase right now of where the yellow is going to be. And the reason I use the white instead of the black, now that we're kind of getting here, is that I want that yellow to be really bright. And if I used a dark thread or a black like it calls for, it would leave that kind of dull. So I'm just doing this so it's a lighter underbody, which results in a lighter body. So now I've got some oval tinsel that we're using for the ribbing, and I like to take that, kind of clip it down to the core, and I do that because that core can spread out a little bit as you go to tie. Now you want to catch just a very edge of that where it's wrapped with the metal. Otherwise, how I unwrapped it, it can continue to do that on its own if you don't capture it. So there we go. We have all that taken care of, and I'm going to come up here to roughly, the body says half, but I'm not going to go half because the front half of the body is going to have a head and throat and wing, and so I'm going to go just a little less than half of the body will be yellow. So let's come up front. Just gonna get that out of the way. And if you've watched me at all, you know I like to put my floss on a bobbin. It allows me to keep better control and not waste so much. And this is single strand floss. And you might see some little hairs that show up as I'm tying. and we'll deal with those once the body's done. So I'm working hard. I want to keep that floss flat as I'm tying. Going through this. And I'm going to go all the way down and then back, just to ensure that I have a good, fully covered yellow body. I'm sure this was probably originally tied with floss, with silk, which would be nice, but I don't presently have any yellow silk, so anyway. The real important thing about this is you got to avoid the point of that hook. It can really give you some gnarly hairs with this material if you catch it just wrong. I'm going to have some anyway, and we're just going to trim them. Just going to take the scissors and trim those off. Doesn't look like we're going to have too many. And if you go, if you find yourself, you're tying this fly and you think, well, I went a little too far with my yellow. Well, all you got to do is when you do your dubbing, just dub back over that area. It'll be all right. So here, go ahead and clip all that off. I'm just going to rotate this, and I don't know, I'm sure you all can see it on camera. Just some little hairs every so often. Another reason I like to use a bobbin with this material is if you have calluses and rough hands at all, you can really do a number on your materials. So let's move this forward. And now I'm going to put on the black line, black thread. And all I'm going to do is just wrap over the top of that white, like so, capturing everything. Bring it all above the hook, cut it off. So at this point, it kind of gives me like Jock Scott vibes, with the way the body's looking. So we're gonna call that good right there. And now I don't have any monkey fur, so I'm just using some hairline dubbing in a dark dun. So this is rabbit. And I'm a big fan of dubbing and with thin noodles. I'd rather put on several small, short, thin noodles than try to dub it all at once. And you, of course, can tie however you wish, but I recommend that to anyone that asks on how to do dubbing. I think you have better control over what your final product looks like when you do it that way. And I'm generally happier with my results. You get that noodle too long and too fat, and it becomes very, very unyielding and unwielding when you want to tie with it. So we'll just keep this dub up. I'm basically just going to dub to right here where the bend back is at on the hook. So not a whole lot farther to go. And this rabbit hair's got a few guard hairs in it, so it's giving me a little bit of material to work with here. Okay. So there we are with the body, and we're gonna rib it. Now I like 5 ribs, and I'd like my third one to be close to that intersection. So I'm gonna hold my line here. I'm gonna say, pull that off. 1, 2. Oh, I don't like the way that's looking. Back up a little bit. 1, 2. Okay, well, my rib didn't work the way I wanted it to, but 4 looks good. 5 looks good. And I'm gonna give it a 6th rib, but that's just so I can bind it down. And honestly, you're never gonna see that. So there we have our body. Now what I did on mine that I took the picture of, and it doesn't say anything about this in the recipe that I have, but I went ahead and took my Velcro to that fur and just picked it out. Try to get that kind of a leggy, wispy look coming down the bottom. Like so. Alright. Now I think the original fly this was probably tied with a married hair wing, but the variant I'm tying is a married feathered wing, but I am tying this as a hair wing with bucktail. And like a lot of bucktail flies, probably adapted once it came to the United States. But we're going to go ahead and bind that wing down. Now I keep all this on here so I can grab both and really manipulate that wing and get it lined up the way I want it. You know, I see a lot of people that'll cut them before they tie it on there, and that, if it's not right, you're kind of hosed. So we'll just roll that around so I can see a little easier. Cut that excess off, and I'm going to start to kind of form the head a little bit. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is, this calls for a badger throat. So I have a nice badger saddle here. I've already cleaned off the feather and kind of got prepped it a little bit for the tie. So let's go ahead and get this tied in. I am curious if anybody is watching this or sees this and you're from I don't know if you're from England or if you're a person that actually still uses, you know, these old patterns. Let me know how this matches up to maybe what you've seen or maybe what you use. I'm tying this off of a picture from Taft Price's International Fly Pattern book that I have. So I'm at a bit of a loss. This is tying this from a pencil drawing and a very vague recipe. So if you've used it or you've seen one, let me know. I can take it if mine doesn't look like what it's supposed to. And lastly, now I've got that done, now I'm just going to come back and I'm going to build a little bit of a head. And in doing that, I'm pushing a lot of that hackle backwards, that you can say imitates gills or other parts of the bait fish this is supposed to imitate. So last thing to do, pull out the whip finish tool. I guess almost the last thing to do. Whip finish that off, clip it, and then a little bit of a lacquer or a Sally Jansen's Hard as Nails, whatever you got. So there you go. There is the gray monkey, a Atlantic salmon fly from England from the 1800s. Beautiful fly, fun to tie. I've never actually thrown it in the water. I don't know how well it fishes, but I'm sure it does well. If you liked it, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe on the bottom. I'd really appreciate it. And until next time, I'll see you around the vise.